questions that I'll just check.
Okay. So in times of crisis and upheaval, such as we're experiencing today in the US and around the world, these have caused profound mental and physical suffering. As I'm sure we all know, over 1 million people have already passed away around the world, with the US accounting for about 20% of the total. Millions of people have fallen into poverty. Domestic violence is on the rise. Many animals are being surrendered to shelters or abandoned because their families can no longer afford to feed them. And then there are the many wildfires, hurricanes, floods, natural disasters. So the challenge is to find a way to use this massive suffering to our advantage, although it seems absolutely impossible. How can we do this? A starting point is to recognize that when things are going smoothly, we tend to resist change, even small, easy changes. And generally speaking, it's only when the pain gets absolutely unbearable that we're willing to try to find new approaches. So if there's a silver lining in the challenges that we're facing, it's perhaps the opportunity to try to see this as a chance to move out of our comfort zone in ways that we might otherwise not have done, to re-examine the purpose and meaning of our lives, to explore our boundaries, beliefs, and biases. So we have an opportunity now for spiritual growth. And spirituality refers to our search for meaning, connection, and value. So it relates to the mind, to our inner world, instead of our physical body and the external world. And how we rise to the occasion, whether it's with chronic fear and rage, or perhaps calm acceptance, all of this completely depends on how we frame, how we picture, how we Photoshop our version of reality. So in this short series of classes, we'll be discussing one way of representing reality, the Buddhist path to enlightenment. And as the Dalai Lama points out, we each have our own viewpoint, which is shaped by our culture, our background, our personal experience. And so there isn't a one-size-fits-all spiritual path or religion. Instead, different religions, different spiritual paths meet the needs of different individuals. And so we try to respect all of them equally. The Buddha himself, in fact, taught a variety of seemingly contradictory ways to meet the needs of his students. The essence of the Buddha's teachings are presented in the Four Noble Truths. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with these already, but I'd like to just give a short overview. So the first noble truth, and these are not like, when you say the Four Noble Truths, it sounds like they're, carved into stone in big all capital letters, but that's not really the intention. The first opens our eyes to the nature of suffering and its relationship with happiness. Here, suffering, or I guess we could also refer to suffering as undesired experiences, which is what Venerable Thupten Chodron says, undesired experiences. And that refers to everything from the slightest mental discomfort, unease, dissatisfaction, all the way to fear, abject fear and anxiety. And of course, it also includes physical pain, where physical pain is usually accompanied by mental distress and vice versa. Having shown us that we have experienced suffering in the past, that we are suffering in the present, and we will suffer in the future, the Buddha then taught many causes of suffering. What gives rise to suffering? That's what we need to understand. Furthermore, can we eliminate the causes of suffering? And not just temporarily, not just for today, but forever. So in the third noble truth, the Buddha explains why it is possible to transform our deluded, self-cherishing minds into the enlightened state of universal love. In the fourth noble truth, Buddha reveals the path, namely the method of conjoining wisdom and compassion that makes this gradual transformation from a deluded state to a pure state possible. So here the word path means consciousness, consciousnesses or awarenesses that eliminate undesirable experiences and their causes from the root. So as we go through our sessions, I think that you'll notice, and I'll try to point out, that the Buddha's way of thinking turns our worldview completely inside out, bringing to light our innate goodness and humanity.
Ani Tendrol, I'm so sorry for interrupting you. I know there's a lot to manage. I thought Chappelle was going to be with you. There's a couple of people in the waiting room.
Okay, I just let one person in.
Okay.
I only saw one person.
One, yeah, it should be Katerina, does it say?
Uh-huh.
Yep, okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh,
Sorry for interrupting.
no, not at all. Okay, I think we got everybody. I'm gonna try my mute all button. Okay. So let's take a minute to think about who is the Buddha, because we're talking about the Buddha's teachings. So in order to get a better sense of who the Buddha was, in order to generate some greater respect and faith in the teachings, we need to understand who was the source of these teachings. So the first of these, turnarounds or revolutions that I referred to is seen in the life of the Buddha, Prince Siddhartha. So he's a historical Buddha of our eon. He was born miraculously from his mother, the queen, in Lumbini in western Nepal, to a royal family. And a prophet said that he would either become the next king or he would become a seeker of the truth. So of course, like any good father, the king wanted his son to succeed him. So he did everything in his power to shelter the young prince from the outside world. He ensured that he had the most delicious food, silken garments, and matching shoes, beautiful women, and more. So years passed, and eventually when he was in his 20s, the prince encountered old age, sickness, and death during his occasional ventures outside the palace. And he realized that everything is impermanent, nothing lasts, no matter how much we wish it to. He was so disturbed by this realization that he decided to leave his palace, his devoted, loving wife, and his young son, hoping to find a way to spare them from experiencing such misery. So having renounced his life of material pleasure, he lived as a wandering ascetic, trying many, many different ways to find the truth. And by persevering through 6 years of extreme hardship and constant practice, he slowly transformed his mind by eliminating all of the root causes of suffering, ignorance, attachment, and anger, and the like, until one day, when the last, most subtle obscuration was finally purified, he attained the state of mind known as enlightenment. So the Buddha's experience as a householder, as a spiritual seeker, prior to his enlightenment, is somewhat similar to ours. And so it's helpful to think of these commonalities, the shared experience, as a way of inspiring ourselves to emulate the Buddha's efforts. So let's just take a minute to think about impermanence and death. This is a topic that we'll return to in the next session in greater detail, but it really forms one of the most important foundations for the Buddha's teaching. And so let's take a moment and think of our first meetings, our first meeting with somebody who was aged, who was old. Right? So perhaps it was, your mother, or it could have been your grandmother, maybe an aunt, an uncle. Try to remember how she looked, how her skin felt, perhaps how she walked. And how did you feel when you recognized that she had aged and that you too would grow old someday? So I can remember that this experience didn't actually happen to me until I was in college. When I came back from college after my first year, or on my first break, and my mother met me at the door of the apartment. She opened the door, and she was wearing glasses for the very first time. She was wearing glasses. And for some reason, just that impression really, really brought home this idea of impermanence, that she was getting older. Likewise, think of a serious illness or injury that you may have experienced or perhaps are experiencing now, that's been a wake-up call for you. Lastly, reflect on the death of someone, maybe someone close to you. Remember the chain of broken hearts, the finality of that sense of loss. So the Buddha taught that we can be happy, that we can be free from the cycle of birth, sickness, old age, and death. Wouldn't that be amazing? Doesn't that sound too good to be true? But it's not. So Buddhists believe that countless people have attained Buddhahood already in the past, that there are Buddhas all around us now, and that there will be many, many Buddhas to come in the future. So in this fortunate eon, the Buddha taught that 1,000 Buddhas will appear. And so Shakyamuni Buddha was actually the fourth of the Buddhas of this eon. So the others being named Krakuchandra, Kanakamuni, Kashyapa, and then Shakyamuni Buddha. And then the Buddha to come, the next Buddha, is Maitreya Buddha. So every living creature that has a mind, whether it's a spider, a donkey, or a wombat, everyone will one day become a Buddha. And so we should treat them with respect. Buddhas are everywhere, meaning that they're omnipresent. And they are omniscient, meaning that they can see what we're doing, that they know what we're thinking. And so if they can see us, late night binging in Haagen-Dazs, they can discern our past lives as well, but they're not omnipotent. Okay, they're not creators in the biblical sense. In order for the Buddhas to be a true source of refuge from misery, we need to exert ourselves by listening to, studying, and meditating on the teachings. By doing so, we develop full confidence in the path, and we can entrust ourselves to the Buddha's care without hesitation. And the Buddha has many special qualities. And so here's a very, very brief summary. And usually in these Buddhism in a nutshell classes, we don't go into as much depth as I am right now, but I thought that was so interesting. And it's so important to be convinced of, who the Buddha was, right? Before we start delving into the teachings. So anyway, just very brief summary. The first quality is that the Buddhas are free from all fears. This gives them the ability to help others overcome their fears. So what kind of fears are the Buddhas free of? So they're free of the fears of samsara and also the fears of nirvana. So fear of samsara means like samsara being our ordinary worldly version of reality. So lions and tigers and bears, right? All the things that we're scared of, COVID, of course. Fear of nirvana, meaning nirvana is the liberated state. It's a state of liberation, but it's like a state of eternal peace. Okay, so of great peace. So more on that later. But the idea being that a practitioner would attain the state of nirvana, but then kind of get stuck there, kind of stall, and not continue to work for the benefit of all sentient beings. The second quality of the Buddhas is that they have skillful and effective means to free everybody else from fear. The third quality is that they have equal compassion for everybody. They are not they're not biased, right? They don't only take care of, certain people and not others, or certain types of beings and not others. The last quality that makes a Buddha a suitable guide is that the Buddha is able to fulfill the aims of all beings. Again, all beings, without bias, whether or not those beings have helped them. Okay, so they don't pick and choose. There's no favoritism, in other words. So whether we make offerings or not, whether we have faith or not, whether we're of a high and noble rank or not, doesn't make any difference. The Buddhas will exert themselves equally for our benefit. So the Buddha is said to have given over 84,000 teachings to serve the wide variety of individuals' perspectives and capacities. And in general, the teachings are categorized into two. So again, you may have heard about this already. The Hinayana, which is roughly translated as the lesser vehicle, which is now referred to as the Pali tradition, and the Mahayana, or great vehicle, which is now referred to as the Sanskrit tradition, to avoid the somewhat pejorative terminology of lesser and greater. So it's just kind of a misnomer. So anyway, so the two traditions overlap, and they share many of the same philosophical worldviews. The Pali Canon describes primarily what's known as the hearer's path. So hearers are people who are primarily motivated by the desire to free themselves from samsara. So the focus tends to be a little bit more towards oneself. And the Sanskrit tradition is focused and describes the bodhisattva path. So a bodhisattva is someone whose main goal is to attain enlightenment for the sake of himself or herself, but also for all sentient beings. So it's slightly broader in scope. Now, that being said, many studies and scholars have shown that there's, again, a lot of overlap between the two traditions. So the Pali Canon also has teachings that describe the bodhisattva path and vice versa. And in fact, it's better to recognize the progression, the tight relationship between the two traditions. They're all interdependent. And then you may have heard of the Vajrayana tradition, the tantric tradition, which is practiced not just in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, And it can be seen, it's best seen as a branch of the Mahayana tradition. So in that sense, the Pali tradition and the Sanskrit traditions are both its foundation. Okay, so generally the sutras are three types. They cover ethics, or the Vinaya, like the monastic vows and the lay vows, etc., as well as the philosophical and worldview presentations, so the presentations on wisdom and method. So the Buddha's teachings identify three main causes that result in undesirable experiences. What are the three main causes? Ignorance. Hang on, I gotta admit somebody. Ignorance, attachment, and anger. Okay, those are the big three. So what's important to note is that these three causes all lie. Where would you think they would lie? They lie within us, right? Within our minds. They're not out there somewhere. They're all within us. So Buddha shows us that we are responsible ultimately for our personal experiences, for our subjective experience. It all comes down to our own minds, to our own choices, right? So we are actually fully in control of our experiences. So whether we have a good day or a bad day, all depends on our personal perspective. So in today's session, we're going to explore the two powerful negative emotions of attachment and anger. Take a look at how those influence our realities. So the Buddha said, if you wish all happiness, then renounce all attachment. If you renounce all attachment, you will achieve the supreme happiness. So here's another point that goes against our conventional way of thinking. That again, happiness is found within our own minds rather than out there online. So I don't know if you realize this. I had to look it up. Amazon sells over 12 million different kinds of products. That's a lot, right? 12 million. So happiness, and we all know this, happiness isn't out there, right? It's not even to be found among the 350 million products sold by Amazon marketplace sellers. If true happiness were to be found outside, then the more of the good stuff in life that we have would always make us happier. That's the logic, right? The more stuff you have, that we would always have to be happier and happier and happier. And we know that's not the case, right? There are limits to how many fine wines we can savor without becoming jaded by drinking. If we watch a favorite film, after the 100th time, it gets a little bit boring. We put away all the toys that our kids cherished so much as they get older and they move on. But we're blinded to our attachment to the extent that the qualities of the object are inseparable from the mind of attachment. So their beauty, their preciousness seem to be fused, seem to be one and one with the object itself, whether it's the aroma of a fine perfume, a compliment from a coworker, the soft warmth of a sweater on a chilly night. It's like that old, saying, right? Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, right? It's like it's baked in. But all of these enjoyments, we have to, recognize, we have to admit that it's simply attachment. So I think that's something that we all recognize, right? But we need to, watch our minds over and over again as we come into contact with different objects, with different phenomena. Watch the mind as it becomes, attached. Watch the mind, analyze how it holds on to the particular object, how it adds adjectives, to it. Like, for example, what's the difference between a weed and a beautiful garden flower, right? A weed is something that you don't like, but it's really not all that different. You know, well, there are plenty of good looking weeds out there. A lot of times it's just, you know, what other people have said, right? Oh, that's a weed, it's ugly, right? But, you know, you might find that it's a perfectly nice flower. And if you find that the weed has, you know, some kind of value to it, like some kind of medicinal property, then all of a sudden, you know, it's something that you want to keep and not pull up. So whether the day is beautiful and makes us smile or not, again, that's a projection, a simple example of a projection. For example, if we're very busy, we might not even notice the weather. If we're excited because it's, you know, it's a beautiful sunny day, we get excited. Well, we might want to try to take photos of it to try to preserve that memory, right? Because it's something that you want to hold on to. So you want to take a photo and share it on Instagram. If we're out enjoying the day together with a companion, whether it's got 2 feet, a 2-footed companion, or a 4-pawed companion, maybe even 4 hooves, our experience isn't the same as if we were alone. So for my mother, even when the weather is seemingly perfect, she feels great sorrow because it reminds her of my father, who recently passed away, and the walks in the park that he so relished on the nice days. So it's not easy for her anymore to enjoy those beautiful days. So any experience, pleasurable or not, is colored by our past. So a 55-degree day in October can make us feel a little bit sad because we recognize that winter is coming. Yet a 55-degree day in March, after a long, cold winter, makes us feel like summer is around the corner. It's time to break out the t-shirts and shorts. So attachment ranges. Attachment has many different faces, right? It ranges from being very subtle and very hard to detect, all the way to the in your face, this is the best in the world, I love it type of attachment. And what are we attached to? The Buddha specifies 8 different things in particular. These are known in the Buddhist Dharma language, right, as the 8 worldly Dharmas. So what would you guess that the 8 worldly Dharmas are? Here we go. Advanced zoom. I'm going to try to, oh my God. What am I, oh shoot. I lost my mute button. I was going to try to unmute everybody.
If it's easier, Ani Tendrol, we can unmute ourselves too from our place.
Here comes the button.
Okay, Gloria, now I'm hosting, so I can.
Sounds good, Geshe-la.
Oh, all right, so just call out your ideas. Please share. I know I've been babbling on for a long time.
Happiness.
What do you think? Happiness?
Happiness.
Okay. Can you be more, right? So that's what we're talking about. Happiness arises when we get lots of what we want. What do we want?
Material things.
Mm-hmm. My hot cup of tea. That's exactly what I want. What else?
Acknowledgement, praise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we want to be recognized for our good work, right? We want to be. Huh?
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind. Okay. So a state of mind. Not quite something that we can physically, like, well, you can't really do that for fame either. Well, okay.
People.
Uh-huh. What was that?
People.
People. In what sense?
I mean, we got attached to people.
Okay, so you're saying happiness comes from people, from having close relationships with people, maybe that sense of
For some.
Okay, all right. So maybe that goes along with this idea of comfort. Okay, so maybe we can lump that in with comfort. So we've got wealth, fame, reputation, and comfort. Comfort, which can be, I think, either material comfort, so like, having a good steak dinner, if that's what you like, right? Or maybe feeling satisfied, feeling that happiness that comes from like a loving, close relationship, right? Yeah, I think that's good. So the 8 worldly dharmas are presented both in terms of the desirable objects and the undesirable objects, with the undesirable ones being just the opposite, okay? So displeasure, fear, perhaps even anger arise when we're separated from what we want. So if we don't have, wealth, if we don't have pennies in the piggy bank, if we're poor, if we're being criticized publicly, if we're being ignored, if somebody calls us an idiot, our reputation is tarnished, particularly publicly these days. Likewise, if we're hungry, if we're overworked, right? If we're exhausted, all of those would be the conditions that we don't want. So we're taught to believe that having these 4 desirable objects, right? So they were wealth, fame, reputation, and comfort. We're taught to believe that having these is what happiness is all about. And that way of thinking, as I think as we all realize, is very limited, because holding on to phenomena that are inherently temporary, impermanent, right? Such as like the number of likes on your Facebook post or something like that. That's just a transient pleasure, right? We know very well that that's not going to give us, any type of lasting pleasure, and it's not something that is portable, right? We can't take it, with us, particularly, after we pass away. It doesn't do anything for us, right? It's a short-term, temporary boost. So furthermore, another way of looking at this, having pennies in the piggy bank, a new laptop being recognized, so they're really just the causes of suffering. When you really think about it, you think of how much time and energy, we end up spending protecting our stuff, like with alarm systems, locks on the doors, insurance policies, passwords, attorneys, antivirus software, all that stuff, right? It's all to protect all the things that we think of as ours. So when we're feeling bored or in some way restless, we'll go shopping to satisfy our craving. And in a way, this is like a type of meditation in itself, right? It's like an analytical meditation of what we want to buy. How do we satisfy that craving? So we may do some research online in order to find the best product, and we'll do some comparison shopping to get the right price. And then think of the difference in feeling, right? The difference in in your mind when you're still browsing, like, you're at the point where you're just kind of cruising through different web pages. You're looking through dozens of products, to find the one that you want. How does that mind differ from when you've locked in on a specific choice? When you're like, aha, that's the one I really want. It's just the right size, it's the right shape, it's the right color. I got to have that one. That's it, right? So once that sense of, mine, M-I-N-E, is generated, it's very, very powerful, right? You think, that's mine. I've got to have it. I've got to have it now. That's why I pay for Amazon Prime, because I can get it faster. And it's very, very powerful. And retailers know that. That's right. So they're very smart. They take advantage of that state of excitement, right? So, if you're buying, some kind of piece of electronic equipment, then they quickly try to sell you an extended warranty. They're also smart, though, on the other hand, to offer things like, free shipping, right? Free shipping and free returns, because they know that people are also kind of fickle, right? So what you like today, what seems so fantastic today, may not seem so fantastic tomorrow. So the point, though, is that this type of happiness, like we were talking about how it's very transient and so it's very temporary. That type of happiness, it's not associated, with a particularly calm, peaceful state of mind, right? Even though, you think it would be, it's really not. So let's just take a minute to again do like another mini meditation. So let's try to recollect very vividly an experience of getting something that you wanted after a very long time, whether it's a promotion in your job, a new pair of socks, anything. The point being just to try to recollect that experience. So try to pick something that's, maybe that happened recently. Think through the process that you went through to obtain that that goodie, that one of the four worldly dharmas, right? And what was that resulting mind like when you actually succeeded in getting what you had set out to get? So I think you would find that there isn't any one moment where you could say that, happiness had satiated that need for something, sort of that itch, right? Even after you've, gotten the item, you might start wondering, you might have buyer's remorse. You might say, gee, did I really make the right choice? Maybe there was something better out there. Maybe I overpaid, right? Or even if you decide that, yes, it's met all my expectations, I'm very happy, there's still, kind of a restlessness associated with that, right? And now that you've got it, you're so happy, you're excited, maybe you have to, again, prompted by that happiness, you have to go out and do something, right? You have to share it, you have to tell everybody about it, you have to whatever, right? Protect it. So it's not a static, peaceful, state of mind, right? So Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, we're in pain, but it's different from the pain of sickness. It's the pain of attachment. This is hard to see or control because strong attachment is mixed with our experience of the object. It obscures us from seeing the object's real nature and what is happening in our mind. Wrapped as we are in desire for the object, we're unable to see all that the worry, aggression, unhappiness, and fear that we have in this life comes from that desire, which is excessively concerned with the happiness of this life. So that's a quote from Lama Zopa Rinpoche's book, How to Practice Dharma. So true renunciation then is turning away from the pain of attachment. If we cling to any of the four desirable dharmas that we've been just talking about, then we still need to practice letting go, right? So if we're still holding on to these things, then we need to instead, the antidote for that is to practice letting go. So doing so is like removing a hard, sharp piece of glass that's lodged in the mind. That's what Lama Zopa Rinpoche says. Once we can remove that piece of glass, right? Let go of that attachment, pull it out, get rid of it, right? We immediately experience relief. Life becomes simpler, less stressful. On the other hand, if we're already at the point where we have absolutely no attachment to our possessions, if we can give them freely to anybody who asks, if we don't care what other people think about us, etc., then we're free to enjoy these sources of happiness, right? We don't have to get rid of them. There's no reason to physically separate from them. So it's impossible to judge a person's degree of renunciation based just on his or her external possessions. It's the habitual grasping at it's that grasping attachment, that mind of attachment that we're trying to get rid of, to eliminate, not so much as the things themselves. So in order to free ourselves from suffering, how do we do this? We need to cultivate wisdom and method. We need to transform, that means to transform the negative emotions, such as attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, and the rest. And how do we do this? So our main tool for doing this careful work is meditation. As any self-help practitioner will admit, the difficulty is that we're using our own minds, our own, obscured, impure minds to investigate and to cure our own unhealthy minds. So it's kind of, it's like circular, right? And so we're walking a very fine line, and it takes skill and guidance from teachers who have successfully walked the path. Through meditation, we can redirect our powerful habit energy of desire and attachment, shattering its obsession with the four worldly dharmas, and turning it instead toward the goal of attaining supreme enlightenment. Likewise, we can use anger on the path to enlightenment. We can use the force of anger to burn through the laziness in we can use it to fuel our practice so that we can continue to help others despite the hardships that we may encounter. So even an emotion like regret, we're often overcome by regret and remorse. We're so trapped in the past that we can't change. We're trapped in the past that's, frozen in the time. We regret things that we should have said or something that we should not have done. There's no way we can fix that. For example, my mother, again, she can't forgive herself. She can't forgive herself, and she's beset by doubt as to whether she did everything she could for my father as he was dying. We can harness that same genuine, deep-seated regret as part of our daily purification practice. And it's the power of this regret that purifies our sins, purifies our non-virtuous acts, and protects us from committing them again. So we like to feel that we are in control of ourselves, that we're in control of our lives. We think that we're in control of our emotions, and yet I think, we know that we're not. We realize that we're vulnerable, particularly, when things get rough, right? We all know that we're very vulnerable because we're not in control of our emotions. Ordinary beings such as ourselves have very, very weak minds, or at least I do. Our minds, as we've been discussing tonight, are under the control of a variety of negative emotions all the time, every minute of the day, 24/7. So I like to use the analogy of walking my foster dog. And I was going to show you a funny picture of her, but I'll skip it. She permits me to walk her on a leash. And for the most part, she respects my directions. So the leash is kind of like an agreed upon convention, If I turn left, then she'll turn left. If I ask her to stop sniffing a dead squirrel on the road, she'll do it sometimes. But the truth is, I have to admit this, that she's stronger than me. Okay, the dog is stronger than me. And we both know it. So if we meet a reactive dog when we're out walking on the street and she gets excited, then she can easily overpower me and lunge forward. And I have to just hang on. On the other hand, going back to the topic of meditation, on the other hand, somebody who trains her mind consistently through daily meditation, investigation, and analysis, and who is 100% inspired to practice for the benefit of all sentient beings, has a strong, courageous, focused mind. Okay. So her mind is focused and hard like a diamond. Just as a ballerina who practiced hundreds of hours over and over and over again, has perfect concentration and balance, and can dance effortlessly with a mind that is neither too uptight nor too loose. Likewise, should we develop our minds. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit, give a very short description about meditation, because we're down to the last few minutes. But are there any questions in terms of what we've covered so far? You can self-service on the unmute. If you can do that and ask a question.
Was Buddha free of emotions? Like when his parents died, how did he react?
Right, so that's a good question. So, so actually, his mother died when he was very, very young, so before he was enlightened.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly when his father died, but the point being that so Buddhas are free of all negative emotions, right? So anger and attachment and the like. But that doesn't mean so that they don't feel great compassion for all sentient beings, right? So everything that they do is motivated purely by the force of this compassion. They don't have ordinary emotions as we would normally describe them.
So he would feel compassion for the suffering of a dying father. And once he passed, would there be a period of mourning or?
Well, I think but it's also tempered, with the realization of impermanence, and death, and recognizing that those are part of the natural, course of existence and samsara. So it's not, when we talk about compassion, it's compassion based on reason, so it's not necessarily like also, with the sense of wanting to help out, to do something to rescue the person or the being, from the suffering, right? So it's not just it's not just like a sentimental type of compassion. It's not a compassion that burns out, in other words, that gets, exhausted, emotionally exhausted.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So if we advance in our mind to become a Buddha, as you said, we're all capable of becoming Buddha-like. At that point, when we're looking out for others and guiding them, do we have another stage that we advance to, or are we so evolved that when we get to that stage, it's a pure act of selflessness and we've reached the final point of enlightenment? Do we move beyond Buddhahood?
No, because Buddhahood is the ultimate state. There's nothing like beyond Buddhahood, right? So once someone has attained Buddhahood, then they're able to, help sentient beings in ways that we certainly can't do, given our current polluted states of mind, given our current, the limitations, of our physical bodies. Does that help?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Ani,
Uh-huh.
you mentioned a book called How to Study Dharma, but I didn't catch the name of the author and what it was in reference to at the beginning of the talk.
I think it's How to Practice Dharma.
Oh, okay, sorry.
And it's a teaching on the 8 worldly dharmas, and it's a book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche.
Thank you.
Okay, one last question, and then we're going to I'll talk a little bit about meditation because I promised to talk about meditation. And then we'll have more time for questions and answers. How's that? So meditation, as I mentioned, and as we all know probably, is a method for transforming the mind. And there are really 2 types. Again, just to repeat probably. The main 2 types are analytical meditation, and then what's sometimes known as stabilizing meditation. So analytical meditation is the process of thinking of a particular, subject, going through each point by point, going through and figuring out whether or not it makes, perfect sense to you. And so, like, for example, we talked about the 8 worldly dharmas, right? So you could use that as a meditation object, right? And you could go through and think to yourself, well, how come there are 4 desirable worldly dharmas? Well, how come they're not 5, or 6, right? So you could go through and see, is anything missing? Or maybe there should only be 3, right? Can they be collapsed? I don't know. So you would just basically reflect on the topic, again, point by point, and try to see whether or not you can poke any holes in the logic. Does anything just not seem right? And then, if you can't resolve the questions themselves, then you go and you consult some of the commentaries, read some other texts, or you go to your teacher and you say, hey, I'm a little confused about this. Can you help me understand it better, right? So a good student, just even speaking in general, right? A good student is somebody who's asking questions, asking the tough questions, asking any question, right? So I'm a terrible student because I can never think of any questions. Not out of a sense of pride, not like, oh, geez, I know so much already, but because, it's like a limitation of my mind. So anyway, but the point I was trying to make is that once you've, resolved all of those questions, any lingering doubts, once you're like, oh, wow, that makes sense. I really fully understand it, crystal clear, and I get it. I really accept that point that, yes, there are 8 worldly dharmas. These are what they are. And this is the purpose of studying this topic. And yes, this is great. So a feeling of conclusion, right? A feeling of stability of like, yeah, that's right, arises. And so at that point, you take the time to really hold that realization, right? So you don't just like jump to the next topic, right? You really take the time to let that sink in, to really allow your mind to become one with, that little realization, right? And so as you keep doing that over and over again, then the realizations, build one upon another, right? And so, that's like how to do analytical meditation. Remembering, again, the point of that description being that, it's good to really hold that sense of conviction and don't lose sight of it, okay? So stabilizing meditation is a non-analytical process, right? So it's the opposite from the analytical meditation, right? It's where you're just sitting and training your mind to focus on a particular object, whether it's an image, like a picture of the Buddha or an image of a flower, whatever it is. That's one way. Or is, the most famous way probably that we all know of is focusing on the inhalation and exhalation of the breath, right? Or doing a body scan, where you gradually relax, all the tension from your body. So the point there is not to try to have a completely empty mind, right? So we're not trying to just sit, with our eyes closed and have a completely, empty mind, like, an empty room or something. Because that's not, that's really not possible. We're not trying to stop all thoughts, all discursive thought. But instead, it's to watch the process of how your thoughts arise, right? Where do the thoughts, come from? How do they abide? And how do they eventually, disappear? Right? So without allowing ourselves to be drawn into the thoughts, to be provoked in any way, to have any, reaction, but just, to watch the thoughts sort of at a distance, at an arm's length. So that's, like the beginning stages of developing calm abiding. Right? And so that's a whole nother, topic. This is a really big topic, how to meditate. And so that's, the topic of a different course. But, I hope that as we progress through each of the sessions, then we'll have more time. I'll make sure we have more time to do a little bit of meditation at the end of each session. Okay? So you'll get to practice, each of these types of meditation. So we did a little bit of the analytical meditation, right? We did the brief introduction to impermanence and death. And then we did a little meditation trying to recognize the nature of the mind of attachment. Okay. All right. So I think that's all I'm going to say for now. Are there any more questions?
Ani,
Uh-huh.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you. You recommended the book, It's Up to You, by Dzigar Tendrol in your last class. And Bruce reminded me of that. And I read that book twice this summer. I just loved it so much. I was like Linus with a blanket. It went everywhere with me. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for recommending it, and that I just ordered 2 more of his books, Intelligent Heart and Uncommon Happiness. So this isn't a question. I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. I will pass that along to
Louisa?
Tenzanamo.
Louisa?
Yes.
Oh, it's Gloria. Hi. Who is the author?
I'm going to mute myself and let Ani explain.
Okay.
Don't tell me.
No, I just wanted to look up the book. That's all, if it's that good.
It's up to you.
I will send a picture of it to you, Gloria.
Thank you, Louisa.
Put it in the chat, maybe.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any experiences, that you'd like to share related to this topic? Anything that you're struggling with, or anything that has worked really well for you?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and what's your name?
Anna.
Anna. Hi, Anna.
Hi. So my question is, when you are like in an analytical situation, so
is it possible? It's obvious that when you analyze something like the basis of critical thinking, you come up with some solutions, and some things might make sense to you or to me. But under the same circumstances, somebody else thinking about the same thing might come up with other solutions. So how do you know when something really makes sense? And is it that universal thing that it should make sense or not? And why there are so many different versions then of a solution?
Right, right. No, I mean, that's an excellent point. And I think that we're going to talk about that more in later sessions, but that's really kind of, the, it's kind of it in a nutshell. Because we realize that, our reality is constructed by, again, by our own, socioeconomic backgrounds, by our own beliefs, our own unconscious biases. There's a lot of fake news out there, right? We all create our own stories. We all project our own stories. We all, bring everybody into our own experiences. But it's always, seen through these lenses, right? This is my subjective experience. What I'm seeing right now, what I'm bringing to a situation is completely different from, even from you guys on the other. You're all sitting in your homes looking at, right? We're all kind of seeing ourselves in these little tiny icons, right? It's all just mind, right? It's all just emotions, mixed in and feeding our convictions, our conceptual thoughts. So, so when we talk about, when you think of something that's so different, right? We could say, oh, how could there be Buddhas? How could there be, how could they have so many wonderful qualities? How can there be, future, past and future lives? How can karma exist? I mean, there are many, many other aspects of the Buddhist teachings that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet. But again, that's just shows that our perspective on the world, is so narrow. It's tiny, 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 right? And we need to be able to expand our minds. That the mind is actually infinitely capable. That it has infinite potential to expand and to be able to experience, immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable, joy, immeasurable equanimity. All of those are qualities that, if we try to limit them, in our normal circle of the normal self-cherishing, self-grasping, me, myself, I, mine, then none of that would be possible. But fortunately, that's not the case.
But so how do you, if I can follow up on that, until we achieve that awareness that we have all these different very narrow perspectives, until that happens, how do you bring reconciliation and in a place or in a situation where people think that their perspective of the truth is the truth and it's in deep contrast with everybody else's? So how do you mediate that awareness?
Well, I think it's just that, it's trying to, starting with our own minds, realizing, our own personal, the limitations of our own personal thinking, right? It's seeing where our views are, identifying our views, our beliefs, our biases, and then trying with patience and with skill. And as I said, the key word is mediation, being able to try to see where somebody else is coming from, whether it's one individual or a group of individuals, trying to see where what's prompting them perhaps to think a certain way, trying to see what's underlying that perspective. Oftentimes it comes down perhaps to an emotion, maybe it's fear. If I don't do something this way, well, my goodness, then the world's going to end, or something terrible is going to happen, right? And so trying to always, keep that door open, trying to see where there's some commonality. And it's of course it's not easy. It's not easy. But reacting, as Buddha always says, reacting instead with anger or with aggression, in the long run, only makes things worse. And so trying to slowly, bridge differences, reach out. And when you think of, what's going on in the United States, now with the all of the protests and what seems to be, irreconcilable differences, the best approach, then from a Buddhist perspective would instead be to try to sit down together and a lot of this work, is being done to try to develop, true, genuine mutual respect based on an understanding of each other's experience.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Annie,
Uh-huh.
is there anything that you would like us to read before next Thursday?
Well, there is a book that this class is based on. It's called Buddhism in a Nutshell.
Okay.
By Venerable Amy Miller, and it's published. I think it's published by FPMT, Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition. It's available.
What I can do is I can add the link. It's a Buddhism in a Nutshell.
You can get it on Amazon.
It's Vulnerable who?
Venerable Amy Miller.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll add it to the description of the class in the calendar, and then that way I'll include the link to the book directly.
Okay. So maybe we'll close with the famous prayer from A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, Master Shantideva's prayer. So I'm just going to read it. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, find an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merit. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms, the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests, and may all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, there too may I remain to dispel the misery of the world. Okay, so I guess that's it. Again, if anybody wants to stay longer. If you have more questions or if you just want to say hi, I'll hang on for another few minutes if anyone's interested. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of the evening and take care. Be safe, be well. Wear your mask. Thank you again.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you for your
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Cheers.
you. I'll stay next time.
Okay.
Annie,
Mm-hmm.
this is not related to class, but I just wanted to convey my condolences. I'm very sorry. I didn't know that your father passed away.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
He passed away in June. So yeah, I mean, it's been hard, I'm trying to help my mother as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah, Geshe Darge's been very helpful, very comforting. And
I'm glad. So I'm sorry for your loss.
thank you.
I know it was challenging to go and visit them with the COVID.
That was a big challenge. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, very sad to think that, it's kind of like wasted time, lost time, so to speak, because we really didn't go until it was from February, probably until April or something. Maybe even, yeah, April. And we finally
Right.
said, he's might as well just go.
Right.
Yeah, I guess, it's something that everyone's going through. It's really hard.
Well, I'm very sorry that you went through that. I just wanted to give you my heartfelt condolences.
Thank you. Okay, well, looks like everybody's
Okay.
leaving, so
All right.
let's see
Have a
you
good week.
All right, you too. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.